Okay, thanks. Hey everybody, thank you for joining with our celebrations for the Ecological City Art and Climate Solutions panel and planning meeting. Tonight, you will hear from our local environmental experts on important climate challenges impacting the Lower East Side of New York, as well as inspiring community cultivated climate solutions and our Ecological City Art and Climate Solutions project, which is through many months of environmental research, partnership building, and workshops led by our artists and residents that engage community on both visual and performance arts, that it all culminates in the Ecological City Procession for Climate Solutions in May, which features both visual art and 21 sustainability site performances throughout the community gardens, neighborhood, and waterfront. And just as a side note, we also close our meeting with a collaborative Zoom collaging movement. So I invite people throughout the meeting to find your favorite image of nature on your phone so you can share it for the closing of the meeting. And let's start with our first speaker, Wendy Brawer of Green Map, who will be discussing neighborhood sustainability and updates on the Eastside Coastal Resiliency Project on the Lower East Side. Thanks.
Thank you, everybody. And what a day this has been, unlike no other. And, you know, people who are thinking about our climate, our communities, what's going to happen. I encourage us to stay strong and continue working together, working hard. And hopefully tomorrow's a better day. The future's unknown, right? And this wasn't the first slide, but this is fine. This is an image of East River Park, and you'll find, especially on days like this, that going down to the side of the river is just so good for your well-being and health. So please use the park. And it's only partly open, but there's still wildlife there. In fact, wildlife is starting to come back. And all of us can get involved in stewardship efforts around the park in the coming years to help bring it back to life. Can we go to the next slide? And to me, right now, the north part of the park at Sky Cove is open. And if you go there, it's dismaying because there's so much concrete. And what you notice is that the native grasses and the sunflowers are what making it cool. So that's a lesson we're trying to bring down to the lower part of the park, is that we need more fast growing grasses, certainly more shade, a lot less astroturf, you'll see. And I want to say hats off to Lower East Side Ecology Center, which will be getting a new space there eventually. Access for all is really important and something we all need to keep fighting for, as well as helping our community become more prepared for whatever storms and what climate change brings. We're in a drought right now. Have we done any preparation for this? It's really an important thing coming right up. Next slide, please. So I've been watering my street tree, by the way. We're very lucky in the neighborhood that we have 54 community gardens, and maybe there's one or two more even now, but they're all little havens of cool greenness and nature that we can enjoy and be part of all the time. I'll give a shout out to the CSA, Community Supported Agriculture, $13 a week for a really good array of fresh local produce. If you look at the Lungs website, click CSA to pay for the next week. There's only a couple weeks left, but this year, but next year. Next slide. Our gardens are just starting to really get serious about tracking the kind of food, how much food they're growing. It's an important resiliency measure, as well as good for our health every day. So with Green Map, we worked together with Green Thumb a little bit this year on a new mapping project. Next slide. I'll mix in some mapping projects, by the way. But I want to say garden-wise, really one of the city's worst habits is pitting housing and gardens against each other when we need both. This is a scene from the rally last week at City Hall. And I think a good outcome of it is the postponement of Elizabeth Street Gardens eviction. So I don't know if it's directly connected or not, but we have a lot more to do. And what we know is when we stand together, we do more to keep our gardens going and growing. So next slide, please. These are screen maps made back in the 90s. Yeah, I used data that Earth Celebrations had collected and created this map. And the notable thing is the first edition had 2 broken hearts for bulldozed gardens. By 1999, there were 6. Next slide. So we've had a lot of loss of gardens in this neighborhood, but we also have had buildings like Charis that were vibrant community centers just coming back to life. And this is going to be something you'll be hearing more about. Charis El Bohio is the building. How can you get involved? Next slide. You know, more is going on around energy innovation. This slide is from the show currently at the Swiss Institute on the windmill and solar panels from the 70s, folks, that were on 11th Street and how they changed policy. Next slide. And there's coming up this week, tomorrow is you can go to this, you see in blue, that's the link to this energy workshop here at Village East Tower. It's about thermal energy networks. You might really like it. And on Sunday, Saturday, stepping off from Avenue B and 8th Street is a little green infrastructure tour at noon. Come and join me if you like. There's just a couple more slides. Next one, please. Oh, you can skip this one. Next slide. Okay, and I just wanted to mention that I'm working on an atlas about the Green Map project right now using our new website builder. If you're interested in mapping and using it, we have a big meeting next Tuesday. You're welcome to come and join us, find out how this works. Next slide. Just worked with kids on Governor's Island. If you're a teacher, an educator, our tools might work out really well for you as well. Their project took only 2 weeks and they had an incredible map ready showing island climate vulnerabilities, the SDGs, and also ecosystem services. Next slide. And that's the end of the show. I'm at one of Katherine Freytag's wonderful painting workshops for Earth Celebrations. And just want to remind us all the future is unwritten. It's the fabulous unknown, and it's all about what we create. Thank you, folks.
Thanks, Wendy. So thank you, Wendy. It's always, Wendy has a long history in the neighborhood and so inspiring to always hear what she has to give us a good overview of what's happening in the neighborhood. So our next speaker is Frederick Levrat, a gardener, as well as he's an architect, Green Oasis Garden. And he will share a presentation on the garden and some of its green infrastructure, climate solutions.
Yes, hi, I'm supposedly talking about lungs, which I'm not officially part, but I will happy to talk a bit about, and Green Oasis Garden, where I have been a member for maybe 30 years now. So Green Oasis Garden is one of those 52 or 54 gardens that are in the Lower East Side. They are result of destruction of the built city. They are occupied space. They are in a way kind of maybe non-capitalistic system space, but they are mostly community space. And it's very important that there's this collaboration between greenery, between community, between children, and growing food. And that's what I'm going to try to show quickly through this example, this Green Oasis Garden. Next. So as we know, we're in this big center of the world, big metropolis, large amount of concrete of building, and those little pockets of space nevertheless exist in Manhattan. Next. Next. As you can see, oh, well, no, you can go back. I'm sorry, I was not. Yeah, just giving an illustration. It's right in the middle of Manhattan. You're a little bit on the edge somehow, but I think the community managed to take over those space and are defending them. It's still somewhat unstable, even so now we're better recognized. Next. So we had some history, some charter. Now it's 44 years that this garden was officially defined. And our initial bylaw was to do a safe space for children of the city. Some really interesting picture of what was there 40 years ago, 50 years ago, and how the city fell into decay, fell into violence, fell into a lot of drugs. And it's really interesting that the community, as a group of community members, as local residents, kind of took over, rebuild some small infrastructure like this gazebo, little barbecue and things like that. So I'm just giving an introduction. You can imagine the transformation of that urban landscape through community activism. Next. So we have some compost, we have some flower, we have different committee taking care of different elements. Next. It's important to recycle. We have a nice pond. We also absorb water. We have been recognized recently to, in fact, lungs have received a grant as we are, in fact, heat island prevention, where the health of people is preserved in those gardens because the temperature is much lower. We reduce the amount of flooding in the city because it works as a sponge, etc. Next, we do activity with children. We do activity with the community, making clothes. Next. We have bees workshop. We had for a number of years bees, but it's difficult to keep them alive throughout the winter. Next. And as I mentioned, it's a community garden. So the word community is very important, where we do a number of activities during the day and the night. Next. Keep on going. Next. We have a nice stage. We have organized many concerts with lungs participation or coordinating between the different garden. And yeah, people have been doing all sorts of activity and participation. Next. Next. Recently, we kind of welcome refugee. We felt like the community was to be expanded because the Lower East Side had a lot of refugee who were not necessarily easily fitting in. So we invited for a barbecue, for participatory activities. Next. And once a year, we are pleased to receive Ecological City, who is always performing, participating. So we're just one of those 52 or 54 elements in the network of the community, trying to, yeah, take care of our environment, take care of neighborhood, take care of our community. Next. And the artists activate this community very nicely, and we appreciate that. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Fred and Green Oasis. You know, it's great to have a good example of so many of the features that each garden offers to the larger ecosystem. So our next speaker is Dr. Paul Mankeiwicz of the Gaia Institute, who will be speaking to us about climate and coastal resiliency solutions, and always has something inspiring to share.
Yeah, there's still, I think, real opportunities. There's a couple of ways we have to look differently, though, and one is really about water, because there's a system really underlying, just in the last talk, when you heard the community gardens described, and Wendy was describing the green over the concrete, makes a huge difference. Because anytime you have multi-layered vegetation, like on the left, with water, it will reverse climate change by capturing carbon. How much? It will evaporate every single day 4 liters per square meter and capture 20 grams of carbon, as opposed to on the right, where the 6 liters into the combined sewer will cost you 27 grams of CO2 and carbon into the atmosphere. Next slide. No, you get the wrong, this is no, that's right. Yeah, so here, 300 square mile city, this is the opportunity. If those 60 square miles of roof space were like the community gardens on the Lower East Side, they would feed a significant fraction of the city by dropping the cost of air conditioning by a third to a half for 1 to 3 story buildings, and basically in percentage to the amount, if there's a HVAC system on the roof and it's taking the air in from a green roof, it'll run efficiently by 10 or 20%, depending on the coolness. There's 60 square miles of roof space, but just to the 3rd story, around the whole city's buildings, there are 150 square miles of wall space. So trees are great, but anytime you say tree, you basically are writing off the 4-year-olds because she will never see it. If you grow plants, just like Wendy was showing, you have plants, they will grow in part of a year. You could scale a 30-foot wall basically in a year or even less with anything from Scarlet Runner Bean to Morning Glories. There's 6,300 miles of roadway. They could simply have small swimming pool type structures with I have a lightweight soil that would float and basically do something with it. But the big opportunity, which I'll show you in a minute, is for the shoreline. And what has been done on the Lower East Side, looking always at the mussels and the oysters makes an immense difference, because the coast could be changed into a way to entirely remove the nitrate dumped in. Next slide shows Manhattan. I had to turn it on its side to fit it in. This is what it looked like really 1609 when the colonists came, and before, basically, in the Lenape who lived here. That and Wallachia, which is what Eric Sanderson calls the rest of it, would have basically evaporated something like 5 million cubic meters. To put that in context, that's the same quantity as the wastewater, 1.3 billion gallons that we discharge every day, except when it was going through the plants you see in Manhattan there, and then the rest across Queens and Brooklyn and the rest, it would have captured 16,000 tons of carbon every single day. And the same thing would happen in Parkland, but there's a problem right now. Kind of came up in Wendy's talk. Every single day we use 1.3 billion gallons of water. That's the equivalent of a 1/4 inch of water over the whole landscape. Well, it's wastewater when it comes out. It's not. It's sinks and showers and laundries. That's 3/4 of it. And that could basically entirely change the climate of 3/4 of the city. You're actually pretty much the whole city. Next slide. So why would you want to use the gray water? Well, basically, there are 6 wastewater treatment plants dumping into the Western Sound, and you can see the beautiful red color. Those are dead fish on warm summer evenings because there's no oxygen, because the algae grew in the water and took all the oxygen out when they no longer had sunlight to power photosynthesis. The next slide shows basically my friend Michael Fishman put this together. If you take the western part of the Western Sound, it's about 25 million square meters, and the eastern is about 58 million. And I'm telling you that because every single day, the city's wastewater treatment plants put in wastewater. Remember, 3/4 of that doesn't have to go in there because it's gray water and could literally cool the city. And if you simply built 1 square mile of salt marsh and mussel bed, as I wrote into Bloomberg's 2008 plan to use them, and DEP is trying to get this right to the governor, have DEC okay DEP's permit to use rib mussels to clean the water. Basically, rib mussels, a square mile, which is quite unbelievably small and inexpensive, could fully filter the top 4 inches of that western portion of the sound, or the top 2 inches, an immense amount of water, and you would no longer see the hypoxia that's in the Western Sound now, killing fish. The opposite would be true. Every striped bass, is 44% salt marsh. Doing this would increase the fishery by about 5-fold. Next slide. So if you simply took, when they're closing Rikers Island, if you simply built marsh around that, or around the Hunts Point, simply taking the 19,500 tons of waste we make every single day and making salt marsh and mussel bed around these islands would literally change the entire water quality of the Western Sound by taking the pollutants out and building back into the fishery. Next slide. Basically, just to show you something very simple, that 1 square mile would filter all of the water going into the Western Sound from wastewater treatment plants between 5 and 50 times a day. At 200 mussels per square meter, relatively common, you would do it 5 times. At 2,000, which is, again, not even excessive, it's 50 times, 50 meters per square meters a day. In other words, 50 times that 2.7 million cubic meters, or that roughly 700 million gallons. Next slide. Next slide. Oh, where are we? There should be a slide after that, no?
My apologies.
It's okay. So the point is, though, that's in the water. Just any place you look at the edge, if there's no marsh there, it's dead. It doesn't need to be dead. This was one of the richest landscapes when Henry Hudson settled in here, one of the richest temperate estuaries on the planet. So DEP is right. That slide, basically, they did something for combined sewer, and you can see it would cost way, way more. And basically the blue line on the left is how much waste combined sewer they're capturing. The next slide, though, shows you the solution. Basically, if you simply use ribbed mussels, which are weedy and they grow, instead of having the side look like the beautiful concrete that Wendy was criticizing, it would look like the piece on the right. In other words, it would capture more carbon than any other ecological system on the planet, except for the tropical rainforests and the eelgrass. The next slide. So mussels, they're weedy, wonderful creatures, and they are that creature just to the left there. Picture 50 cubic meters of water above that, piled above that little box on the left side. Every single day, that much water and sediment goes into the area below the mussels. In other words, it's adapting to sea level rise by taking whatever in the water column and making the whole marsh rise. That section on the right, that green swath on the right, is literally rising something like 1 millimeter plus a year because of that filtration capacity. Adaptive ecology, an amazing thing. Next slide. So basically, this is the flood zone. So right now, this is basically because we built on the edge of the land. And there's many things you can do. And the original plan from the lower side was great because it was green. Water has to come in, but also leave. And there's no plan now for doing that. So if you take the next slide and basically just consider, my friend Michael Fishman gave, anytime you have something like that little wall there, or the big wall they're building, if there's rain on the inside as opposed to tide getting in, it's going to damage and maybe destroy property, think the nicer properties or whatever, just anything on that side. The water has to be able to get out. Let me say it in a theological way. The reason God created streams and creeks is because water comes in and goes out at about the same rate, but not with anything they're building. And that's worth looking at because they are putting the whole community at risk with those walls if they have huge, say, 4 inches of rain in a short period of time. Next slide. A solution looks like this. I built it in a sim site in the Bronx. Basically, it's a very simple thing. This is just a native wetland. It will come by in a year. And maybe you can look at some areas in the Lower East Side to do it. Your gardens are absolutely beautiful, but these will grow. They could grow under rain spouts from buildings, as we have over on the El Jardín, the Paraíso. So basically, this is simply that the photovoltaics are used for pumping water out of groundwater, which is about 10 feet down across the whole Lower East Side and Lower East Village. Next slide. So the only hope is you have climate change, we have a drought. It would entirely unaffect the greenery you're seeing here if we took that one, roughly speaking, billion gallons of water, which is the gray water, and fed it to green walls, green roofs, and street-side plantings. Then you would not have them basically idle because they can't capture carbon or cool without the water. But we have the water. We can either throw it down the sewer or we can feed it to something like this. Next slide. So basically, temperature is only modified. Plants plus water will never get above the dew point. Say 95-degree day, 80% relative humidity, the temperature is going to be 88. And so, and 50% relative humidity be 15 degrees lower. Next slide. So these are the numbers. If you let, just as Wendy was saying earlier, if you have plants that are basically a foot or two tall and multiple layers, they will evaporate every single day, 6 liters per square meter, 6 millimeters of water, and capture 20 grams of carbon, but they'll produce 4,000 watts of cooling capacity or air conditioning in the process. On the other hand, every gallon you run into a wastewater treatment plant is going to cost you something like 18 grams of carbon. So the same 6 liters that we literally ran through the vegetation is going to cost you 6 liters of steam from the wastewater treatment plant to produce 63 watts and 2,027 grams of carbon. So that's the choice. So it really is worthwhile to get the city council, to get DEP, to get EPA, to get the state to require gray water to be used to change the climate change in our cities. It will do it. And we could do it simply with beautiful pieces that have already been built, and they'd be community-based, and that's the way ahead, because it will change local climate literally and change the microbiome that the kids have their hands in.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Paul. Always inspiring. Simple solutions are right at hand. Okay, Shaheeda, there you are. We're introducing Shaheeda from Goles, who is here from Puerto Rico, beaming in from an offsite conference. So great. Shaheeda is from Goles. She's the climate justice, climate resiliency coordinator there, and she will speak not only about her involvement with Ecological City, but also important efforts she's doing in the neighborhood.
Thank you so much, Felicia. Does everybody hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay, so it all started out me working with Good Old Oasis with my own nonprofit. First and foremost, good evening. My name is Shaheeda Smith. I am with Good Old Oasis, and I'm the Climate Justice Hub Advocate. And we are working on some exciting projects that I would love for everyone to kind of get involved in. My devices are dying, so if I do get cut off, I do apologize. I just wanted to leave that little caveat. And I just thank everybody here for the work that they do and the work that we can do together, particularly in the future. So Infinite Movement is my not-for-profit, and prior to me working with Good Old Lower East Side, I did coordinate with them and partner with them on various, specifically on the Ecological Parade, right? Eco City Parade, and for many years. And so I'm just very grateful and thankful to you, Felicia, for continuing this important work. Even when people didn't realize how important it was, you made sure that you remain consistent. So I do applaud you, and I want to give you your flowers. So the source picture that you see here is from 2021. And this is just some young people dancing to They Don't Really Care About Us. And this is a reference to how folks who live on the waterfront have been heavily impacted disproportionately by flooding, by climate change, by Sandy. You can change the slide, please. So as you can see, these are from the slide, these are NYCHA youth and residents asking to save their future and save their park. And what folks didn't necessarily understand is that the new development that was coming to this beautiful place of memories for so many families on the Lower East Side was protection plan for the ESCR that many of you may be familiar with. Wendy, my co-CAG member, already kind of described it and the need for flood resiliency. And so this is basically what folks were talking about at that time. Even though we were angry and there was a lot of contention around it, we finally were able to see the forest for the trees and see the importance of making sure our people are protected through flood resiliency efforts. Please change the slide. Again, so because so often before Sandy, folks who live in NYCHA housing already was experiencing an environmental justice impact from their health impacts as well as their mental health impacts. Because what people don't often realize is environmental justice is something that has been purposely created in communities of color, placing us in environments that are particularly harmful to our health, like the mold and the lead that you will find in many housing developments. And then after Sandy, it was exasperated. You can change the slide, please. You can change the slide, please. And so this is a picture of young people that from this past summer doing erosion concrete. Wendy also spoke about how can things come from concrete because we're in an environment that lacks green spaces. So this initiative is showing the resilience of folks who are living in the Lower East Side, on the waterfront, and all the way to the Bowery, because that's who we all are, and we all are going to be impacted by climate crisis one way or another. You can change the slide, please. Change the slide, please. And so this specifically speaks to the mold and how it causes asthma in children and vulnerable populations like the seniors. The rose crown that the young lady has in the picture was created by flowers that were donated to good old Lower East Side through Trader Joe's. They donated to us on a regular basis. And we were able to recreate and show sustainability through resiliency, through the dance that the young people performed on the day of the wonderful procession that we do every year. Next slide, please. And so is this the last slide? Because I haven't seen this presentation, so I want to just make sure I stay within the constraints of the time frame.
Yeah, it's the last slide.
All right, awesome. So what I do want to share with you and what they do not have, a copy of is the Add Your Voice Environmental Justice Community Survey that Good Old Lower East Side is working on with the NYC Climate Justice Hub, which is comprised of NEJA, New York City Environmental Justice Alliance, and CUNY. We're doing a research project, and we really just want to gauge the knowledge of the Lower East Side residents who reside in 10002. Oh, now my cell phone is dying. This is perfect. 10002, 1009, 138, and 1003. If you live within the boundaries in this catchment area, we would like to get folks voice about the environmental conditions in which we live under in our homes and in the environment that we currently are in, with the construction everywhere. We live with 3 bridges in our community. We live with a highway, toppled with the intersectionality of being folks of color, people of low income, and also just folks who live in the urban area who are often disproportionately impacted by poor air quality and poor water quality. So I do not want to say anymore because I don't want to get cut off, but if Felicia could share my email inside of the chat, that'd be great. I do apologize for not being able to produce you all with more information at this time because of the technology that I have going on right now. So again, my email is Shaheeda at Goles. So it's SHAHEEDA at GOLES.org if you're interested in spreading the word about the environmental justice community survey. We want all folks impact information about how they are impacted rather by the environmental justice ESCR. Do we know what the Green Amendment is? Just everything that has to do with environmental justice, how we impact it. So I thank you very much. And I'm about to lose service, and I'm about to lose a battery, and I feel like I'm talking a million miles a minute. And so I do apologize. And so again, I thank everybody for how they contribute to this space. And thank you very much. And thank you for having me and to continue work with Good Old Lower East Side. Felicia, your work is phenomenal. And I just thank everybody again for all their hard work on this.
Thanks, Shaheeda. See you soon. Okay, so our next speaker is Lucrecia Novoa, who's been working with our celebrations since the mid-90s, who leads the puppet workshops. So I'm going to leave it to Lucrecia.
Okay. Hi, everybody. I chose this picture because it's a puppet, actually, a little more than, I think it's 10 feet long, approximately, divided in pieces. I choose because I realized, wow, we are working together for a long time. This is a piece for, I believe, more than 10 years. We work every Saturday for 10 Saturdays from March to May. And I invited everybody, not just artists, visual artists, is everybody. Everybody can enjoy working and making the character we design at the beginning before February. This was part of the parade we made in the Hudson River. I think we did like for 3 or 2 years. It was very incredible experience and energy coming from the water. Totally different feelings. As well in the garden also is another feeling. Next picture, please. Yeah, last year we worked in 2 puppets. We made like kind of a 3D puppet, and usually we work in different concepts. And my idea is, or my work is research, and at the same time learn about all these different concepts. And I make the design, but I work with many volunteers, and I teach a little bit how to develop this project. We work from scratch. Next picture, please. These are 2 different characters from last year, and the design, I try to give just brainstorm ideas, but with the volunteers, we can develop different things, adding to these small ideas. Next picture. Yeah, like I said, we start from scratch. So my first classes is telling everybody, okay, we are going to work in a phase, making a support and adding clay. And it's how simple like that. Try to make a half or a circle or a sphere. Next picture. We work in clay. After clay, we work in paper mache, like 7 layers of paper mache. Next picture. It's a teamwork activity. It's very, very interesting because in just one piece, we can have 4 or 5 people working. So it's a lot of a learning process. How we can share each other's one piece is sometimes challenge. Next piece. This from the picture I showed before, this is the product, the final product, what we got based on the pictures. Next picture. At the same time, when we finish the head of the puppet, we introduce to the painting. So this is making a puppet is very complete project because we can start working in a 3D and a little sculpture, and after we go to painting, make the design, drawing, and after painting. It's a very nice process. Next picture. All the design usually are for connect piece by piece to make a dress of the puppet. So why I do this and not a big fabric is because I need to everybody keep working in something. So if I use just a big fabric, it's impossible. Nobody can work very, very easy. But everybody has their own work with the picture they choose to do. Next picture. Finally, is the puppet done? So we assemble the puppet and we connect all the pieces together and we go to the parade. This is the process, starting from scratch, and you can see what we get. So how we move this puppet with the puppeteer inside of the piece. Next picture. Yeah, these are, I select some of the picture for all of these years working with their celebration. I think I am veteran here, but it's such experience for me. It's very inspired. So thank you very much, Felicia, for letting me participate all so many years. I think that is the last picture.
Thanks so much, Lucrecia.
Yeah.
Now we're going to hear from Yohanna, Yohanna Roa, our other artist in residence, who for several years has been leading textile art costume workshops. Yohanna.
Oh, hello, everybody. Thanks, Felicia. I'm happy to be here for my third year. Well, I have a PhD in art history, I'm master in women and gender studies, and a master in visual arts. I'm an active artist, focused on textiles and performance. Then, if we can see the next slide, please. Then during the workshops, one of my goals is not to buy materials and instead is recycle materials and to use what is within a reach. Another goal for the workshop is to have a pleasant space for dialogue and to create a sense of community. Then there are people who like to talk, others like to be silent, but definitely all of us were there. We want to, during the workshop, we want to make a beautiful garments using recycled materials. Then here we have an image of the last 2 years. This is my third year with the organization. Can we go to the next slide, please? Then the designs represent usually different themes related with the idea of a green city and the work in community. This is a sketch for the 2024 years, is the pollinator garden design. The next image, please. You see, this is the final garment when the people finish it. The next one, please. Here, well, I'm wearing here one of the dresses. Another of the participant is wearing the wetlands design. Next one, please. You can see here the original sketch. Eventually, I have to, make some change. Like here, I decided to change the hat due the participant who used it at the end, the garment. The next one, please. For example, this is one of the wonderful participants, because at the beginning they used to be a little shy, but during the weeks they just started to feel more engaged with our ideas, with the green city. Then we start to talk and they're learning. Then I can see how they can develop their own skills in terms of the textiles and garments. And my idea too is to propose them designs that everybody can work on them. Then there are many details that a person who just can be there for an hour, or maybe the person is not good to doing some things, but can create a flower or a small detail in the dresses. Next image, please. Or eventually, next image, please. Or eventually there are people who have learned how to use the sew machine, or more advanced maybe techniques, to work with later. Then the next slide, please. That's one of the designs for the 2023 year. I believe that's green solutions, New York green solution. I believe that next image you will see the final dress when one of the participants, she was during the workshop too. Usually, eventually there are people that used to come for 1 or 2 days, but usually we have people that, like to be there during the whole period of the workshop and even to participate during the parade. The next one, I believe that is less gardens. The next one, please. This is the draft, the image that you see in the skirt, and the beautiful gardens that we have in Lower East Side. Next image. That's the final garment. She has been, actually we have had people who was in the first workshop, at least with me, and they just got back to the workshop to the next year, in the next year. One more slide, please. I believe you can see here that they're really, you know, similar, or maybe the end garment is accuracy in relation with the original draft. And the last one, please, one more slide. This is Blue Water Spirit that we use some image of New York estuary. And next one, please. That's the final garment. So thank you so much. We definitely have a wonderful time. We talk about the topic. I can say that the people who involved in the workshop and myself, we are really, really committed with the goals of the organization. Then thank you so much.
Thank you, Yohanna. So now we will hear from Kathy Creutzburg, who actually has been involved with our celebration since almost the beginning in the early 90s. And she will talk about bioarts and a bioremediation sculpture she's been working on and contributing to over the years.
Hi, everybody. Oh, sorry, I had an opening the same day as this event. So anyway, I'm going to talk about the two different things that I was involved with. Can you hear me okay? Is everybody okay, or is there background noise?
No, it's okay.
Okay, so I'll start with what I'm doing now, which is on the left, and that's the bioremediation figure. It's all made out of, the armature is made out of branches, and then I'm taking vines that are from 6BC Botanical Garden and wrapping it around the armature to create a figure in the lotus position for the bioremediation figure. And I, in the past, have made some costumes, which we still use, that are called the zero waste costumes, and they're made out of kombucha leather and spoons from that we found in a compost pile. And anyway, okay, next, please. Oh, well, I already explained all this. So this is the sculpture. Oh, go back, please. This is the sculpture separate with the raft next to it. And then the raft is made of bamboo poles that are lashed together. And I saved dried flowers also to decorate the figure. But all of the greenery is pretty much from the East Village and the gardens. Okay, next. And then the bioremediation figure is pedaled around by a pedicab driver for the whole entire procession. And then at the very end of the day, after the dance performances on the East River, we lower her into the water and bid farewell by throwing rose petals as she floats away. Okay, next. Part of the costuming that we created also had some mycelium, which is like a mushroom-based sculpture product or packing material, natural packing material. And we grew it into forms, paper forms, and painted it with egg tempera that had spices for the pigments. And I wear one of the costumes every year. This is also the belly dancing skirt, and I spent a little time decorating the skirt with those the N95 masks, and I cut them and made sequins out of them to decorate the skirts for this is a costume also known as zero waste. So using all packaging also for decoration. So, okay, continue, please. This is a close-up, and I have several costumes that we stitched, and this is another volunteer wearing one of the costumes in the procession. Okay, next. This is a quick explanation of kombucha leather. First, you ferment tea and sugar in a big container, and then it grows a mix of yeast and bacteria, and then creates something called a SCOBY. And we actually, so we grew a lot of the SCOBY and then dried it for, there's a whole, and this, it's really strong. It's very durable. Okay, next. And of course, this is the mycelium growth. And you can see the paper on the right, you can see the paper forms that we were peeling off of the shapes and then using them to make headdresses. I experimented a little bit in the center there. You can see these, those little bread, I don't know what you call the bread, those little things you put on the bread to close the bags. Those are grown right into the mycelium. Okay, next. A side project last year, actually, we got funded to create these animal figures, Animalia. This organization is, well, this is a group of 3 of us who created these 2 sculptures. We got funding. It's called Night Multimedia Arts, and I built steel sculptures, and then I created these kombucha leather. I don't know what you call them, like patches around that sort of connect the different vines growing up on these structures. Next. And the kombucha leather has held up for a couple of years in the winter and everything. On the left is mycelium planters that the gardeners at 6BC Botanical Gardens used for creating planters for daffodils. Next. This is when we were painting the kombucha leather. We had turmeric paste that we used for dye, and then also India ink painted onto the surface. Next. This is macrame and weaving headdresses. Next. This is egg tempera being painted on the mycelium headdresses for decoration. I think there's one more slide, and that'll be it. And of course, these are the packets that are used. The mylar is used to make sequins for the dresses. Okay, that's, I think, everything.
Yeah, great, Kathy. Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you.
From the gallery, Theater for the New City. And our next speaker is Katherine Freygang, who's also been involved for a very, very long time, who leads collaborative painting projects. And that's really where we're able to partner with schools, community centers, and other organizations. So besides our workshops at the 6th Street Community Center on Saturdays, we have additional workshops in April with our partners.
Well, thank you all for coming, and I'm really pleased to be here. I have been doing this for a long time. I've been developing really the community voice. Please do the next one. Basically what I do, I've been celebrating the gardens for a very long time. I make banners and murals to celebrate the evolving practice of sustainable solutions in the Lower East Side community. I usually start by interviewing people and getting their stories and coming up with a black and white design and then I call the community members back to color it and edit it. And we have been featuring a number of subjects. We started with banners celebrating each of the gardens. Next. As you see, and each is a garden, and then talking about the sustainable solutions that they are using in their gardens. Next. Next. And next. Next. And then when the UN started assembled their sustainable development goals, we took that seriously and started to try to look at how our gardens were in fact fulfilling those goals. So I'll tell you what these things are. The lower left-hand one is a list of the gardens and then an icon of the goal, which is up in the upper right-hand one, shows exactly what the sustainability goals are. So and then on the upper left, they have assembled these into a mandala form, which next, we assembled the whole thing into one story of showing the gardens and how the sustainable development goals were being practiced in those gardens, and we made our own mandala like that. So next. And then when the East Side Coastal Resiliency Project got underway, we undertook a 40-foot mural to describe how that project could, again, uphold the sustainable development goals, and as well as the well-being of the residents and added recreational facilities. So next. So people put this together. This is in front of the Lower East Side Ecology Center. Next. And here are some of the murals that came out of that. Next. This goes actually kind of going down the east side, or going up rather. This is starting at the two bridges. Next. And going up to the Stuyvesant Cove. Next. As well as showing what goes on in the gardens in the Lower East Side. Next. Next. Yeah, that's a little out of place. That's in the middle of the park. Next. And some of the neighborhood solutions like rooftop gardens, and in the back shows EV centers. And by the way, at the bottoms of each one shows the history. So in the bottom of this one in particular, you can see what kind of a rubbly situation these gardens started out as. That's actually taken from a photograph, so it's pretty authentic. Next. I'm going to run through this. This was during COVID. We did a mail-in project and took some images. But the important part of this is that these images that the kids sent in next to make these fence murals, we use them. We are still using them. So next. And then when that project started becoming super compromised, we got into memory murals of people mourning the loss of the East River Park and talking about what kind of natural amenities were being lost next. Cultural amenities were being lost, and these are stories along with the images next. And recreational amenities were being lost, and next. And then we at one point did this to really to support Paul's work about showing how oyster beds and wetlands have historically been so important to Manhattan and the boroughs, and really recalling what good that could be doing if we reinstituted that next. And I put these up, this is at 9th and C, and have this huge sidewalk space in front of it, and it makes a huge outdoor gallery. And let's see what's next. Yeah, I put up the banners, I put up the murals. Some of these banners have been redone because the gardens have gone on and added to their sustainable features, and so they wanted those included. So I have redone them, and I will continue to do these banners to celebrate as they keep developing their gardens next. And the images, as I was saying, get used and reused. They get used for costumes next. And just workshops, people doing their own images next. More costumes next. And then actually to support the Lower East Side Ecology Center, we put them up to celebrate, to help them support their gala that they had this year next. So when we put these up at 9th and C, it is extraordinary in that people see their neighborhood, they're proud of their neighborhood, they're proud of their gardens. They talk about what they want to do, how they are aligned with the goals of ecological city, how they remember old lots that were developed. The stories that I hear when I put these up every year are extraordinary, and the audience is extraordinary in that it's not just people who well, it's just everybody. That's all. It's all the cultural groups, all the age groups, and it is the most satisfying and most interesting way to exhibit what this community has done. And they love to come and be reminded and to keep telling the stories over and over again. So we're going to keep going. Anyway, thanks very much for listening.
Thank you, Katie. So now it's time for my presentation, which I'll give you a bit of an overview of what the overall project is, especially for those who are new. So Earth Celebrations is a nonprofit organization I started and founded back in 1991 to apply the arts to engage community and build collaboration and action on environmental challenges and solutions impacting our neighborhood on the Lower East Side of New York City. And it's really through these arts projects that we connect people with local sites, places of nature, community gardens, parks, rivers within the city, sites of environmental struggle, and grassroots initiatives. And it's really from this direct connection to place, to those sites, their stories and challenges, that the community collaborates, creating this co-created public cultural action, the procession And that through that, it really builds ongoing collaborative action, addressing land use, environmental climate challenges, where we all work together on solutions. Next. So Ecological City was launched in 2018 in response to climate impacts and to engage community on the community cultivated climate solutions that are embedded throughout the community gardens, neighborhood, and waterfront. Next. So in the 1990s, Earth Celebrations, when it got started, we were really seeking to preserve the community gardens as vital open space, outdoor environmental education centers, cultural centers, and vital spaces of social cohesion. But it was really after Hurricane Sandy in 2012 that the community gardens became recognized for their role absorbing the floodwater that devastated the neighborhood. Next. And then followed a recognition, really, of the vital roles the gardens played, providing a myriad of green infrastructure and urban climate solutions, including carbon sequestration, air filtration, reducing heat island impacts, water filtration, bioswales, water harvesting ponds and rain barrels, permeable surfaces to absorb rainwater and floods, and pollinator gardens, along with sustainable agriculture, local food growing in the neighborhood. Next. So the East Side Coastal Resiliency Project that got federally funded, developed after Hurricane Sandy to address flooding and future sea level rise, was underway. At that point, it was an original plan created with some community involvement, impacting the neighborhood, which currently has destroyed large sections of the park, and many conflicting opinions in the neighborhood on the overall approach and design plan. Next. So here's an overview, image of both the waterfront as well as community gardens, now about over 48. Or just about 48 on the Lower East Side. In the 90s, there were over 60. And the climate challenges, embedded throughout the gardens neighborhood and waterfront that are impacting the overall neighborhood really became the framework for the Ecological City pageant. So what are these climate solutions? That ecosystem is the framework for the pageant. Next. So here you see a map which shows the route, 21 sites that go to community gardens, neighborhood, and waterfront. Next. So it's through many months of research, the environmental art workshops that our artists in residence lead, that eventually culminates in the public cultural action or the theatrical pageant. And it's where really participants explore local sites and their climate challenges and solutions with the help and guidance of both the environmental experts and our artists, and then develop the visual art and performance projects that you've heard from some of the artists who've worked on this. So the artistic works amplify the climate solutions and are presented by participants in the culminating procession in May, which ends up with a 10-mile procession to the 21 sites with music, dance, theater, poetry, spoken word that all tells the community's story of both challenges and solutions. Next. So the process includes, after the stakeholder meetings, or now we also have Zooms, we then March through May host workshops. So every Saturday, March through May, there are several workshops. There's a costume workshop, there are the puppet workshops, and then in April we have the partnership workshops, as Katie is involved with that. Next. Next. Oh, so here are the, yeah, we had the puppet workshops doing mask making, Yohanna working on the costumes with textile art. Next. Kathy, again, leading the bio arts workshops. And next. And then the bioremediation sculpture that was initially Didi Mosher who worked on that. And now it's been Kathy who's been working on the bioremediation sculpture. So it involves natural materials, willows, as Kathy said, you know, gathering a lot of greenery from the gardens themselves. It's also incorporated beneficial nutrients for soil and water. So it is remedial in many ways to both the gardens and the river where it is offered at the end of the day. Next. And then Katie's workshops that in April partner with various schools and community centers and engaging those constituencies in the painting of these murals. Next. We've also engaged theater directors. This was in, I think, the early years, engaging Goles to create a performance in response to Hurricane Sandy. It also involved NYCGC residents, which are the public housing projects on right along the waterfront. Next. So then we finally get to May and the procession comes together. It's really thousands of people who participated over the many months, over 50 different community groups. And yeah, you could see all the work that people have created displayed, and the community both wearing the costumes, performing in the pageant, telling their stories. Next. So here are some of the costumes. We have everything from melting glaciers to a costume celebrates mussels, climate solutions. Next. Giant puppets addressing various issues, you know, each year. This is why we, you know, have the experts. So we re-examine what are the issues that we might not have represented and what else we can add to the overall story of the neighborhood that's important each year. Next. Some other what we call banner puppets with paintings also representing different solutions. Next. So here Michelle Brody, who's another environmental artist, who did these incredible costumes. So one is New York City's flood map, really based on data, and Gaia climate solutions, and then sustainable development goals. Next. And then Yohanna's costumes, climate solutions, gardens, and coastal resiliency. Next. And so you get a sense the procession goes from the streets into the tranquility of the gardens throughout the day. Next. At each garden, there's a performance that highlights one of the climate solutions that's embedded within that garden. So here, Eastside Outside Garden celebrates their composting program and also with a compost ceremony. Next. Here, Parque de Tranquilidad celebrates their roles sequestering garden, carbon through trees, plants, and soil. Next. And then the gardeners also participate in ceremonies where they offer water collected at each garden that then gets offered to the river at the end of the day. That celebrates the role of the gardens, both for water filtration, mitigating pollution runoff, as well as water catchment. Next. Here, Artichoke Dance performs upcycling dance to celebrate the recycling program. Next. We have the children's workshop school students who created a song for the gardens. So oftentimes it's not only artists, it's gardeners as well as children who present the performances. Next. And here, you see the community people and residents follow the procession from site to site. They learn about the climate solutions, many which are not visible or known to a passerby. And it's through the procession that the community can learn about these initiatives at each site and how together they comprise an inspiring ecosystem of urban community cultivated climate solutions. It's often difficult for people to grasp the magnitude of the climate crisis, but by engaging community through the visceral experience of the pageant, moving storytelling with visual art, music, performance, rooted in local neighborhood sites, the climate crisis and simple demonstrated solutions are made comprehensible and tangible. So here we have the Lower East Side Girls Club performing a song for solar to celebrate solar microgrids. They've been incorporating solar into some of the gardens. Next. And their pollinator costumes, which they also created. Next. So here we have Elte, who every year she's been doing a native chant for the water, and we honor the water harvesting pond at 6th Street and Avenue B Garden. Next. And here's the Earth School green roof, which we don't go up to see, but we honor it in front of the school. Next. And 1 year, the children created a costume celebrating their green roof, and hopefully we'll be engaging them this year. Next. And yeah, that's the community gathering for the performance. Next. And the 6th Street Community Center also, go back, has a rooftop bee farm. And so they celebrate their solution of the bee farm as well as their community supported agriculture program. Next. And we have 2 bands throughout the day, samba and an Afro-Dominican Kalunga band that leads us to the waterfront. Next. And here we are in the waterfront. Next. And performances, here's Goles with the Hurricane Sandy performance. Next. Beautiful dance in homage to the trees of the East River Park by Jody Sperling. Next. We have stewards of the river that are different representatives of river organizations that say a few words about what their organization's doing on the waterfront. Next. And the bioremediation sculpture that finally gets offered to the river. Next. And sometimes sinks and sometimes floats away. Next. Next. And then we also do what's called creative testimony, where we take some of the visuals, we bring them to City Hall, like we just did last week for the rally, here for the land use on the East Side Coastal Resiliency project. Here we are at City Hall and actually submitted the costume along with written testimony. Next. And then here for the global climate strike with Greta Thunberg in 2019. So there's always an opportunity where we can take what we do locally and have an impact on global actions and how the local solutions we do impact global and city and global climate challenges. So that's the overview. And we can go back to grid. So hopefully that gave everyone a good overview of the project. And Magali, if we can highlight Magali, and she's going to share a little bit of an update on what's happening with the gardens in relationship to the rally many of us were at last week.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh,
Hi,
Jane. Everyone. Thank you, Felicia. I've actually participated at Earth Celebrations as a costume participant many times, and it's heaps of fun. And so thank you for that opportunity. I'm from the New York City Community Garden Coalition and Lungs. And last week we partnered with Green Gorillas to have a rally at City Hall to tell the mayor that our gardens are not for sale to developers. Executive Order 43 is basically the mayor created this executive order as to order all of these city agencies to come up with land in their jurisdiction, whether it's the Department of the Fire Department, Police Department, HPD, Department of Transportation, Department of Health, and then as well as the Parks Department, to look at all the lands in their roster and identify properties that can be used for housing, because he's on this housing kick, with his City of Yes. And we went to City Hall to protest this order. I mean, it's good to have more housing, and we're all for it. Most of us are rent burdened to begin with. And we wanted to make a show of force and let him know that we were aware that community gardens could be handpicked, at least the larger ones that could produce, large scale housing, that we are aware about what's going on, and we don't deserve to be in that roster. I took some time to do the math to determine how much space we occupy in New York, and it's pretty dismal. I took the landmass of New York and the landmass of gardens, which is information that's actually online on the Parks Department website, with a little over 100 acres. Community gardens are 1/10 of Central Park. And we constitute 0.1% of the land of New York City. So that being said, that we are so incredibly small that we're not a threat to housing. If anything, how about getting us to 1%? Parks in New York constitute 14% of the landmass, which is fairly healthy. But gardens are really very, very small. So we went to make some noise to let them know that we're aware. And we also went there to protest Elizabeth Street Garden, which is now very much threatened on the chopping block. If you haven't been there, just Google it, Elizabeth Street Garden. It's between Prince and Spring. It is really endangered right now. And for the past 11 years, they've been really trying hard to stay alive. We have gone to court many times. I mean, first community board hearings, city council hearings. We went to court. We went to, court in Lower Manhattan. Then we won an appeal. Then the city basically took us to court over the appeal, and it went to New York State Supreme Court. And then now, the garden was told to leave on October 2nd. They were being evicted, and through a lot of noise and petitions, So far, more than 1 million letters have been written to the mayor and the governor and a couple of other people in the mayor's administration to let them know that the people have spoken. Over 1 million letters in a city of 8 million. That's basically a strong voice. I don't know how many petitions have circulated out there in New York City that get that kind of support. So that's the update. So far, there's a new stay. So the garden is safe until February 25th. It's the second stay. That's me with my sign, letting people know how small we are and that we don't need to be attacked, and pitting housing against garden is insane. So that's my report. We are not really protected. We feel now, because we have a license, a 10-year license with the Department of Parks and Recreation, that everything is fine, but the license in itself is flawed, because there's an article on the license agreement with the city that clearly states that the commissioner can take away the garden at will within a couple of weeks, no questions asked. So we've been trying very hard to get that removed, but we're basically up against city lawyers, and in the last 3 license cycles, we've been trying at the NYCCGC to get that dropped, and so far we haven't been successful. But because we make a lot of noise, and because whenever we're threatened, we show up, they kind of know that they shouldn't really mess with us, because we're going to be very loud about it. So that's where it's at right now.
Thank you, Magali. Thank you so much. On that note, before we close it out, the other thing is, it's the city's policy. I mean, there's a climate department. I even messaged some of the people who are, the chief climate policy, department people of New York. I mean, the policy of potentially selling off any of the gardens goes against their policy of creating more urban infrastructure climate solutions. So I don't know, it's sort of like one agency against another. So that should be definitely looked at, because there may be allies, and some powerful allies within city agencies. So to close it out, we do a really fun little movement, and we share our favorite image of nature. So if everyone can just call up an image on your phone, it's best to hold it horizontally to the camera of your laptop. And so Jasmine, you can start with the song, and we're going to do arms to the left, arms to the right, twirl around, arms to the left, twirl around. Now we can put our favorite image. Thank you all. Thank you all for participating and sharing. And we'll be And we'll be reconvening, I guess, after the holidays, and in February, we're going to take and digest some of this amazing information and figure out what we can all create together in terms of puppets, costumes, visual art, and performances, so we can keep the conversation going. You know, anyone who has questions, email. If you know other artists who have songs, music, dance, theater, you know, please help share it. We have 21 sites where artists can participate. So hopefully we can all reach out to the community. Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you, Felicia. Bye.
Good to meet everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you all for your amazing work.
Thank you.
Yeah, amazing altogether. Good.
You're amazing.